Habilitation is a postdoctoral qualification or academic degree at some European and Central Asian, North African, and Latin American universities. It is conferred for a habilitation thesis or inaugural dissertation based on independent scholarship, which was reviewed by and successfully defended before an academic committee in a process similar to that of a doctoral dissertation. In some countries, a habilitation degree is a required formal qualification to independently teach and examine a designated subject at the university level. Prevalence. Habilitation qualifications exist in France, Switzerland, Germany, Poland, Austria, Egypt, Denmark, Italy, Bulgaria, Portugal, Romania, the Czech Republic, Finland, Slovakia, Sweden, Hungary, Latvia, Slovenia, Greece, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Lithuania, Moldova, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia. A similar concept known as livre docencia exists in some private universities in Brazil, and in the 3 state universities of the state of São Paulo, where it is a prerequisite of full professorship. The habilitation, derived from the medieval Latin habilita, make suitable, fit, developed in the 18th century, process. A habilitation thesis can be either cumulative or monographical, i.e. a specific, unpublished thesis, which then tends to be very long. While cumulative habilitations are predominant in some fields, they have been, since about a century ago, almost unheard of in others. Its level of scholarship is considerably higher than for a doctoral thesis in terms of quality and quantity, and must be accomplished independently, without direction or guidance of a faculty supervisor. In the sciences, publication of numerous research articles is required during the habilitation period of about 4 to 10 years. In the humanities, a major book publication may be a prerequisite for defense. It is possible to get a professorship without habilitation, if the search committee attests the candidate to have qualifications equaling those of a habilitation and the higher-ranking bodies approve of that. However, while some subjects make liberal use of this, in other subjects it is rarely done. The habilitation is awarded after a public lecture, to be held after the thesis has been accepted, and after which the provenia legendi is bestowed. In some areas, such as law, philosophy, theology, and sociology, the venia, and thus the habilitation, is only given for certain subfields, in others, for the entire field. Although disciplines and countries vary in the typical number of years for obtaining habilitation after getting a doctorate, it usually takes longer than for the Anglo-American tenure. For example, in Poland, the statutory time for getting a habilitation is 9 years. Theoretically, if an assistant professor does not succeed in obtaining habilitation in this time, he should be moved to a position of a lecturer, with a much higher teaching load and no research obligations, or even be dismissed. In practice, however, on many occasions schools extend the deadlines for habilitation for most scholars if they do not make it in time, and there is evidence that they are able to finish it in a near future. France, the degree of doctor d'état, doctorate d'état, called doctorate des lettres before the 1950s, formerly awarded by universities in France, had a somewhat similar purpose. Following the submission of 2 theses to the Faculty of Letters at the University of Paris, the doctoral candidate was awarded the doctor d'état. In 1984, doctor d'état was replaced by the habilitation à diriger des recherches. The award of the French habilitation is a general requirement for supervising PhD students and applying for professor position. This requirement does not apply to the members of Directeur de Recherche Corps who are assimilated to professor by the French Conseil National des Universités. Depending on the field, it requires consistent research range from 3 to 10 years after appointment, and a substantial amount of significant publications, contributions in administration, course organization can compensate for a less substantial research dossier in some rare cases, as the evaluation is primarily done by external and often foreign referees. Germany. In order to hold the rank of professor within the German system, in many scientific branches it is still necessary to have attained the habilitation. It is thus a qualification at a higher level than the German doctoral degree awarded during promotion. It is usually earned after several years of independent research, either internally, while working at a university in a position as a Wissenschaftlicher assistant or akademischer Rat, or externally as a practitioner such as high school teacher, lawyer, etc. Only those candidates receiving the highest to second highest grade for the doctoral thesis are encouraged to proceed to the habilitation. Since 2006, in some federal states of Germany, there have been new restrictions by the federal laws regarding the degree of the doctoral thesis, which allow only excellent candidates to enter the process of habilitation. Once the thesis and all other requirements are completed, the candidate has habilitated himself and receives the degree Dr. Habil. It depends on the state or on the university whether the habilitation counts as an additional doctorate separate from the original one, a distinct procedure, but a formality after completing the habilitation is officially receiving the Venia Legendi, Latin for permission for lecturing, or the ius docendi, right of teaching, a specific academic subject at universities for a lifetime. This status is called private doesn't a private doesn't, abbreviated PD a priv. Does. The status as a private doesn't requires doing some teaching even in order to keep up the title, although nowadays the requirement of habilitation for the position of a full professor is waived for former junior professors. Habilitation remains the common German track to a professorship, which will commonly only be granted after serving some time as a private doesn't. Note that the distinction Dr. Habil is almost never used together with private doesn't, as it is implied therein, and only rarely with professor, in which it used to be implied. Austria. In Austria, the procedure is currently regulated by national law. The graduation process includes, additionally to the subcommission of the Senate, an external reviewer. Holding a habilitation allows to do research and supervise on behalf of this university, as it is an academic degree. This is even valid if the person is not enrolled at this institution. Habilitation ad personam, appointment to a full professorship with an international finding commission, includes a venia docendi, which is restricted to the time of the appointment. Habilitation ad positionem, while the habilitation ensures the rights of the independent research and the supervision, it is on behalf of the statute of the universities to give those rights also to e.g. associate professors without habilitation. Currently the major Austrian universities do that only for master's level students, but not for PhD programs. Equivalent degrees. The cumulative form of the habilitation can be compared to the higher doctorates, such as the D.Sc. Lit. D.Ul.D. and D.D. found in the UK, Ireland, and some Commonwealth countries, which are awarded on the basis of a career of published work. The Doctor of Science in Russia and some other countries formerly part of the Soviet Union of the Eastern Bloc is equivalent to a habilitation. However, higher doctorates are not recognized by any German state as being equivalent to the habilitation. Debate. German debate about the habilitation. In 2004, the habilitation was the subject of a major political debate in Germany. The former federal minister for education and science, Edelgard Bullmann, aimed to abolish the system of the habilitation and replace it by the alternative concept of the junior professor. A researcher should first be employed for up to 6 years as a junior professor and prove prove his or her suitability for holding a tenured professorship. Many, especially researchers in the natural sciences, as well as young researchers, have long demanded the abandonment of the habilitation as they think it to be an unnecessary and time-consuming obstacle in an academic career, contributing to the brain drain of talented young researchers who think their chances of getting a professorship at a reasonable age to be better abroad and hence move, for example, to the UK or USA. Many feel overly dependent on the supervising principal investigators, as superiors have the power to delay the process of completing the habilitation. A further problem comes with funding support for those who wish to pursue an habilitation, where older candidates often feel discriminated against, for example under the DFG's Ether program. Furthermore, internal soft money might be only budgeted to pay for younger postdoctoral scientists. Because of the need to chase short-term research contracts, many researchers in the natural sciences apply for more transparent career development opportunities in other countries. Many more third-party fellowship funding opportunities, including the 5-year RC UK Fellowship and Value in People Awards, no academic culture of age discrimination, and also the postgraduate diplomas in higher education and learning and AMP research academic development. In summary, a peer-reviewed demonstration of a successful academic development and international outlook is considered more than compensation for an habilitation where there is evidence of grant applications, well-cited publications, a network of collaborators, lecturing and organizational experience, and experience of having worked and published abroad. On the other hand, amongst many senior researchers, especially in medicine, the humanities and the social sciences, the habilitation was, and still is, regarded as a valuable instrument of quality control before giving somebody a tenured position for life. Bavaria, Saxony and Thuringia, 3 states with conservative governments, filed suit at the German Constitutional Court against the new law replacing the habilitation with the junior professor. The court concurred with their argument that the Bundestag cannot pass such a law, because the German constitution explicitly states that affairs of education are the sole responsibility of the states, and declared the law to be invalid in June 2004. In reaction, a new federal law was passed, giving the states more freedom regarding habilitations and junior professors. The junior professor has since been legally established in all states, but it is still possible, and encouraged, for an academic career in many subjects in Germany to pursue a habilitation.